Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your astrologer and host. I believe astrology can fast track personal growth, improve lives, and empower parents, and also save relationships, families, and marriages. So, on the Nurturing Astrology podcast, I will offer practical guidance for applying astrology to all of these important areas of life. I'll offer insight from my own work, studies, and life experiences, as well as interview experts to bring you stellar wisdom from other professionals to inspire you on your journey. I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to get started. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Nurturing Astrology. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your host and astrologer, and I'm here today with Cornelia Hansen. Again, hi Cornelia.
Hi.
We are going to do another circle time chat for you, and today we're going to be talking about nurturing relationships with astrology polarities. So we focus a lot on families and children, but today we are going to just dive into relationship dynamics and the polarities. So how we can, as married couples, co-parents, the relationship and creating that good fit for or environment for our children. So looking into relationships and understanding relationships in the chart is a big part of the overall picture. We create and the environment, we set the stage or the energy of the environment for our children. And so understanding this is a great way in. So we're going to talk about the keys to success as we kind of see them, and then go through the polarities. Right. So the first one, and this is, Cornelia's most important, work is in temperament. Her research is in temperament. Her book is on temperament. And this is foundational. Understanding our temperament that we're born with is number one, right? And then learning to know that our child's temperament that they're born with, our partners, that temperament, understanding just the difference in temperament between each other and respecting our differences is like number one in learning how to have a healthy, balanced relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then working with opposites, polarities. We're always dealing with different approaches to different areas of life. And so polarities and opposites in astrology is really important. We know that there are 6 polarities in the zodiac, and we always are working with both of them. We are reflecting or projecting. We're always having to integrate that balance. So even though we are one sign, the opposite sign is always in play, whether we realize it or not. And people come into our lives to help us create those balances. So overall, in relationships, we feel the best and most important thing is communication. Honest and respectful communication is key for healthy relationships. And it requires seeking that balance and common ground, harmony, negotiating, compromising to solve problems at all times. Very Venusian, Venus, right? Relationships.
You also have to have that manner of active listening.
Yes.
So that you know what the person is saying to you, the communication, someone, well, this is what I hear you saying. Is that right? No, this is what I'm saying. You get a chance to make sure that the message is being heard correctly.
Exactly.
That helps a lot in communication.
And this is something we teach our children. Like we talking is one thing. Listening is like a whole nother skill, right? That we try to teach our children to what is she saying? Do you hear her? What is he saying? And I feel like adults don't even do that really well. We're like talking over each other and our minds are going, we're on the next thought. But how many times do you stop and ask your partner, did I just hear that correctly? Like, is this what you mean? Or is this what you're saying you want? You know what I mean? And to clarify. So I don't think that we as adults do it as much as we even try to teach our children to do it. So lesson there, right? And even though this is the point, we also most importantly have to have compassion and recognize we're not perfect. We're not going to get it right all the time. It may be more rare that we do. You're going to mess up. But what's really important is having that working relationship, being able to mess up, apologize, and keep working at it is an example for your children of what a healthy relationship is when you can have a disagreement, have an argument, realize each of your roles in it, responsibility in it, apologize, work it out, and move forward with love and respect. That is the example we want to set for our children, right?
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah, that's the important one.
Yeah. So we'll go into temperament first and
yes,
explain a little bit about, your notes in terms of temperament, each person, and understanding the goodness of fit, which is so important.
That's one of the problems, is that people don't know a lot about temperament. It's something that we really need to teach everyone so that they understand. It's important to know, like I was working in the preschool, right? I had another teacher with me and I had 3 aides. Okay. Now the 3 aides were having difficulty because they were all fast and I was fast. That means that when it came to transitions, we were quick to clean up. When it came to lunchtime, we were quick to get the kids in again. But this one teacher was so slow. She just was, she wasn't the bunny running around. And so they were complaining. And so I put the question to them. I said, okay, tell me, can you slow down? No, I can't slow down. I mean, that's the way I am. I said, well, that's the way she is. And she can't help herself either. It's not like she's got a switch somewhere that we could turn on and get her to move faster. So we have to learn to recognize that someone's different from us and that's okay. That's okay. They're different. And so, yes, it's going to be irritating for us, but we just need to leave her alone. Okay. Not try to push her, because that even makes it worse.
Right. Yeah. Or give her tasks give her tasks that she can take a little bit more time with while you running around doing X, Y, and Z. She's setting up the next thing slowly or whatever, putting her in a position where that suits her and the group, and everybody can get along without causing the irritation.
Right. Exactly.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So we have to notice that when we get irritated by a person, what is it about them that irritates it? Is it something they can do something about, or is it just part of the way they are? Like, I know I've been around people who whine a lot. Oh, I don't like this. And that's always irritated me. There's nothing worse than traveling with somebody. I remember being in Europe and this woman saying, oh, do we have to go down there? And it was just like, oh, lady, get it together. Is it a matter of just difference and we have to respect those differences, whether we like them or not.
Yes.
Because hopefully they'll do the same for us.
Right. Exactly. So explain the goodness of fit.
The goodness of fit, the way that works is, I'm sure everybody's familiar in themselves. When you've been around somebody who's feeding your energy level, you feel comfortable with them. You feel, well, like you and me, when we get together, we can just keep going and going, and we just hit off each other. It's a good fit. So, but you get 2 people who are different, then they're going to have some kind of conflict. Let's say, I was remembering a couple I work with. The boy he came in with his girlfriend, and I think he wanted her fixed, and he was the type of guy that jumped out of bed in the morning and, wow, it's a great day, let's go to the beach. And she's like, when I open the sink, I need more time. So he was accusing her of being lazy. That's what we tend to do. We blame people for those things that we find irritating. I said, well, you know what? I said, you jump out of the bed and you go run around the block and give her a half hour to wake up, have her coffee until she feels that she's ready to go with you. Okay. It's a matter of learning how to respect that other person's needs without expecting them to change. She could change that if she wanted to. She could jump out of the bed just like I do. No, she can't. It's not her way. So that's a goodness of fit. And when you don't have a goodness of fit, then there's going to be conflict. We talked about the father who wants his kid to be an athlete, and the kid is a sensitive, creative kind of person. And so there's going to be conflict. But if he understands that this child is not going to be an athlete, his interests and talents lie in another direction, then he can become more accepting. That's why it's so important to understand people's temperament and how it fits. So we want to adjust. We want to adjust the environment to fit. If you've got an active kid bouncing off the wall, you want to take him out to the park so he can run around for a few hours and get all that energy out, right?
Right. And
you're not going to expect him to sit in the car for a long, long trip.
Right. And if that child jumps out of bed and is ready to go in the morning, then the parent who kind of matches that temperament more, who also jumps out of bed, they can go take a trip or walk to the park or do whatever while mom slowly gets out of bed and gets ready for the day. It's a way of making that family dynamic work based on the temperament, I think that's really great understanding. Yeah. But there's also
without labeling it in a negative way.
Yes.
You're so stubborn. You're so lazy. You're so slow. That kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Very good point. Very good point. But there are many factors that go into the interplay between two partners, between two people. So there is temperament, but then there comes goals, ambitions, your personal standards, even your own upbringing, your own interests, that kind of thing. So there's other things besides temperament that we're also can tend to bring into opposition or, conflict. And so recognizing and respecting those differences as well, and finding where you can have common ground or adjust your lifestyles to fit both also can help create that peace and harmony in relationships, right?
And one of the problems is you have to look at your upbringing too. The family comes in. I'm dealing with a married couple, and she is totally enmeshed with her family. Her family's always there, breathing down the neck and sticking a nose in everything. And she's used to that. That's when she was brought up. But her husband was had a single mother, and she was extremely critical. And so here we're talking about closeness versus distance. And so he couldn't stand it. He'd run out to the garage and work on something, just to get away from that feeling of I'm being smothered to death. So that's another issue that frequently comes up. Introverts and extroverts,
Good point. Yes. And recognizing that and finding a way to, if you want to make this relationship work, recognizing you have to create some boundaries with your family to respect your husband's temperament and his ways and needs and his, feelings. And also to have, if you want to have the family around, recognize and respect that if he needs to escape or go do something separately, that's okay. And it's not him not loving you or not caring, but simply, needing to take care of himself, and you recognizing that and not being hurt and pushing him to be enmeshed in your family when he doesn't want to be or can't be, or finding that middle ground, have dinner with us and then you can kind of tootle off and do your thing while we visit or whatever, finding common ground or a way in a respectful way. Right. So a lot of times marital problems can arise with that disrespect or criticism of those normal characteristics that, like you said, expecting them to be able to change and make a choice and do something differently when it's really hard, and it's not within their comfort or whatever. And then you've got people trying to fit molds and be something they're not to make a relationship work. And then ultimately it ends up falling apart because you can't sustain that. Right.
That was interesting because she said she always dreamed her family life would be like Father Knows Best. So she was figuring on him fitting that role, and he just wasn't in that role. She wanted that family cohesion kind of thing, and it just didn't work out for both of them. That was her big conflict.
And that's interesting. I mean, maybe she was also attracted to this person because some part of her knew that there was also a different way, and he helped her learn that that's not necessarily what defines a family, and
right.
she chose him for a reason, and maybe it was because she needed to grow in that area. So it's like you can also attract the thing that or some unconscious level you need to learn or need to or want to, and then are angry because you have to do it. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Good point.
Yeah. A friend of mine, she's a total socialite. I mean, she's always outgoing and fun. And her husband was an introvert. He was a Cancer, she was a Capricorn, but she had the sun right on her ascendant, and she had a Leo moon. So you saw all this fire, whereas he was introverted. So he was attracted to her because she took care of all the social business that he didn't know how to do. But like you said, it also becomes irritating. The same thing that you're trying to compensate for, it also becomes irritating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go into polarities now. We know that this information can help with any relationship, whether it's, married couples, partners, friendships, parent, child, boss, employee, like any relationship that involves two people. Right. And so when we look at polarities, any polarity represents an opposition of two sides of the same coin that need to be balanced. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the zodiac is made up of 6 polarities, and we're all working to integrate these in our charts. Every one of us, right? We're all, even though if we have everything on one side, we're still working to integrate the other side, or vice versa.
Yeah, because we feel that empty space over there, so we need to bring in something that represents that space in order to learn about it.
Exactly.
And that's and if you have a person, for instance, that has no oppositions in their chart, they have to learn what relationships are and how they work.
Yeah. Also, when people say, I don't want someone.
It isn't natural to them.
Right. And when someone's like, if you have someone who's very much like you, then there's so many similarities there can be ease, but then you're also not necessarily integrating that other side, so sometimes we seek out opposites for that purpose, is to sort of learn how to integrate those things within ourselves. Right. Other people come in to show that opposition, to reflect. We always say that people, are reflections for us. Our children are reflections for us, our partners, not just reflections of us. You don't get in kind of like into that, but they reflect back to us about ourselves. So like you said, if we're irritated about something in someone, there's obviously something in that for me, right, that I need to learn or work on if it's irritating to
me.
Right. Or if I'm frustrated, even with a friend, why am I upset about something they're doing? Is it really my business? What is that about? Must be something I'm really kind of thinking about, or maybe I'm struggling with, or judging about myself, or questioning about myself, and why I'm angry or feeling triggered about what someone else is doing,
Yes.
Or is it, does it really involve me? And if it does, what is my role, and what is it that I'm supposed to learn from this situation, or I'm triggered because I need to learn, right? Something like that,
right.
Friendship or whatever. And so the first house and the 7th house is the axis of relationship. The self, first house, other, 7th house. Right?
It's me and you.
Me and you. Exactly. Right. And in the normal zodiac, the traditional zodiac, that's ruled by Mars and Venus. First house, Aries, Mars, 7th house, Venus, Libra, right? You and me describes that dynamic, us, autonomy, compromise, self-assertion, cooperation. So in the relationship axis, we are struggling between, like you said, that freedom of autonomy, and then that other side of support and approval and appreciation, wanting that on the other hand, right? So,
so if you have a lot of planets in that first house, then the whole weight is on the Mars side. This is a person that's been used to having their way. But the 7th house, okay, it represents the other. Okay, what am I looking for in a relationship? But we have to learn to balance in any relationship. What's mine and what's yours, and when do I need time alone, and when do I need to be with you, and when do I need to compromise on something that we're having an argument about? So they work together. They work together. We have to learn to balance that. And what's the key? It's compromise.
Yes.
It's not all your way. It's not all my way.
Yes, exactly. So you can find Aries and Libra on any angle, any axis of the natal chart, right? So
Right.
if you're, if you're Cancer rising, then you're going to have maybe the Libra axis on the 10th and the 4th, right? The Libra.
Right.
So it can be,
that would be the parenting axis.
and that would be the parenting axis. So you can have still this energy on any axis of the 6, right? So we're going to go through, let's go through the different axes, the different signs. And we can tap into a little bit more of the Aries Libra if you want to, but then we'll go through each set and kind of talk a little bit about the polarities, what they're centralized, and how to balance them. Do you want to go into a little bit more of the general Aries Libra axis and the you me, so that we really
yes, the Aries Libra, like I said, is me and you. So no matter where you find that, it's going to have issues about compromising. It's going to have issues about listening to the other person and learning how to compromise what it is you're having a conflict over. That's what Aries Libra is. So the issues of balancing Aries and Libra is going to come up on whatever polarity it's on. If you've got it on the second and eighth house, then it's going to revolve on what's mine and what's yours.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we cooperate? How do we work that together? Is it all mine? Is it all yours? I remember my son and his wife, they figured out that he had his money, she had her money, and then they had what they called we money. And there was a special bank account for money they both put into that was to take care of the things that they were all, into.
Mm-hmm.
Is the house,
yes,
or whatever it was. Yes. So that was a way of not getting in each other's hair or conflicts. So that's a good way to illustrate how you balance it in that place.
Okay.
Third place, it would be something else. The third axis, it has to do with student and teacher. It has to do with my neighborhood and far away. It has to do with how I think and how I reason. So Aries Libra there would bring those issues into third house issues.
Gotcha.
Complicated. It sounds complicated, doesn't it?
It does a little bit.
But once you understand the polarities and you understand what the issue is that we have to balance, because every polarity has a name. Okay. The first one is me and you, right? It's relationship. Okay. Second and eighth, that's the axis of exchange.
Mm-hmm.
What's mine, what's yours, what's ours,
right?
Balancing that out. So let's talk about the second one. Okay.
Yeah,
and if you look at Taurus Scorpio, that would be the normal axis. So it has to do with possessions and values around possessions, things that you own,
mm-hmm.
Things that you buy. Do you buy things together? Do you compromise on what you want?
Mm-hmm.
When you're buying something for the house, for instance. So Taurus Scorpio has a lot to do with who's in charge here.
Got you. Of the things too, right?
Right, of the things, yes. Who's in charge here? I can't buy anything unless my husband says it's okay.
Gotcha. So when these two are polarized, you're saying that this is where control issues can come in, or dominance or distrust, and letting go. It's like you said, trusting that they're going to do the right thing with the money, or they're not going to overspend, or so that battle between, money issues can be a big one when you've got those second and eighth house issues. Whatever sign they're there, you're going to have that Taurus Scorpio energy.
Right. And the issues related to it, which are control issues.
Yeah. So the issues in that axis are about the control and possessions and shared. How can we share these things, work together to build them, create them, and it's kind of like, I always learned that the first and seventh house were like you and me. It's like the us, and then the marriage. And then the second and the eighth was, what do we do with that? in relationship? What do we create with that relationship? So it's like, here, you and I have agreed to be in a relationship. I'm me, you're you. We integrate and know this. And then when we go here, it's like, okay, what are we going to create with this relationship? What kind of relationship? Are we going to trust each other? Are we going to share our resources? Are we going to keep them separate? That kind of thing. Who's going to control what? Balancing out who controls what. You do the finances. I do this, the duties, that kind of thing. So it's like, what do we do? Right.
Right.
So those are the roles. What do we do with it? Awesome. And then when you move into Gemini, Sag, 3rd house, 9th house, you're looking at the axis of exploration. So the roles here become sort of teacher student, right?
Right. It's like, what are your ideas? What are your, it's communicating what your values are, communicating what you believe in. It's being able to discuss things without getting into fights, so you have to balance those things. Gemini Sag has a lot to do with mental things,
right,
and communication.
Yes. And the polarization here is when we're unable to cooperate, or incorporate what we believe and what the other person believes, and choosing, and you can become, preachy, or, we don't walk our own talk, projecting and blaming.
Right.
So there's a lot of that.
And also Gemini is, it's like looking at the details. It's looking at reason. Whereas if you're looking at the 9th house, you're looking at seeing the big picture. So it's, they might fall in different signs, and that's how it would affect the relationship.
Yeah, if you had Aries, Libra here on the 3rd and 9th, it could be like what I think, what you think. And if I'm thinking, hey, we need to handle all the details of the trip, and they're like, well, we just need to get there. We'll deal with this stuff later. You know what I mean? Then you can have this like kind of conflict, right? So what do I think and want and believe? And what do you think and want and believe? And, who's thinking about the details, and who's just thinking about, I want to go do and experience the thing. Right. And this one's like, well, you kind of need to do X, Y, and Z if you want to get to the thing and enjoy yourself, so
yes,
like, okay, well, I do that best. I'll take that lead in that area. And then when we get there, you're in charge of whatever, or, but taking that sort of pressure out of the dynamic, because, it's just going to create conflict.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yes.
That's a good point. Okay, well, let's dive into the 4th and 10th house, which is the parental axis. So that's Cancer and Capricorn naturally, and that Moon Saturn. So it's the who needs nurturing versus the nurturer, our need to feel the belonging versus the need to stand on our own 2 feet and have that independence.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Well, I think of it sort of like you've got the parenting axis on the relationship axis. This is like somebody needing, nurturing, or they take the role of the giving. And the other person is the one with the rules and this is how it should be. And I'm the teacher and you do what I say. So they have to learn to compromise somewhere. It has to include both nurturing and structure. And so you have to balance these two things, because if you have too much structure, the person that needs the nurturing is going to feel trapped or feel left out or abandoned, etc. And the other way around is if somebody is too needy emotionally, the other person is likely to put up a wall, say, no, that's, you're over the top here. So it's learning to balance those two things. So you could get somebody marrying somebody because they are older and they're more like a parent. Okay. If I'm the Cancer rising, I want somebody, I am a Cancer rising.
Me too.
And I had Saturn in the 7th house, ruled by Capricorn. So what did I end up marrying? I married somebody who was 6 years older than I was, who became a doctor and was always The doctors kind of get, people look up to them and admire them and praise them, etc. So they don't lose that when they come home. So it's you become kind of like, okay, my needs are not as important. I've got to take care of his needs. So that's how it works.
I have a similar axis. So my Capricorn is on the 7th, but I have Saturn in Taurus in the 11th, but Saturn in Taurus. So I got married later in life, but to a younger man, but a hardworking partner that, working to
is your friend. It's in the 11th house.
Yes, we were friends first, right? We kind of knew each other first a little bit for a few years, actually. And then the work in the relationship is very much a working partnership and me working to feel like his equal, and our roles, balancing our roles so that I do feel my needs are also being met as I'm managing my role in the family that we've discussed and chosen, and his role, and feeling that we're equals, even though our roles are very different, right? So it's funny, we've taken these very traditional roles, but made to ensure that we feel like equals. Like that's important to me, to feel like we're equal.
I think because you waited, you didn't get married really young like I did. I was just turned 18. And so falling into that, thing of the older person, he's smarter than I am. He's more educated. He knows more than I do, that kind of stuff. So marrying young, is not a wise idea.
I know. I have to say, I have come to this feeling over the years that nobody should get married before they're through their Saturn return.
Right, exactly.
In theory, it would be like, it's just a smart move, but life happens. You fall in love whenever with whoever, and it's maybe not everybody's destiny to get married later, but I did find that it was important for me, and it fit my chart, my life dynamic. I was always a late bloomer, and it definitely made more sense later in life. It wasn't something I wanted.
You also have to consider the brain stages. I mean, your brain isn't fully mature until 25.
Right. So you're finally getting into like, okay, what I really feel and who I am and what I want, and that growth is important. And then you can look for a partner who really, understands that, so the relationship axis is huge. And that, looking at the 1st and the 7th house, looking at any of these signs on that 1st and 7th can give you an indicator of who you are and what you seek. And also the opposition is you are also your 7th house. So, I also work hard in my relationships. I invest the time and the work necessary to keep it, healthy and good with that Capricorn.
Right.
So I'm not afraid to work at relationship. Right. So understanding that we are both sides of the axis as well, so that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
So let's.
Now we're going to talk about what? Oh, I love Leo and Aquarius. Don't you love those two? I just
go for it.
Leo is so me. Leo is this is who I am, and I want everybody to know it. That's showing that out. Seeking your identity, okay? But why is it that you want to have a partner who is Aquarian, who is not like that? It's an air, rather than fire. Now, air and fire can get along well. It depends on what the rulers are. But Aquarius likes to be freedom. And Leo likes to be praised and wants attention, and you're not paying attention to me. You're sitting there behind the newspaper and I'm trying to talk to you. It's that kind of polarity. I want attention, but you're too busy with whatever it is you're doing. You're not paying attention to me. And it can bring out Leo's temper. You have to remember also that this is a fixed sign. So fixed signs are going to need a lot of help in recognizing what they need to do with this polarity.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that's and you can look to like sort of the Capricorn side or the Uranian side of
That's
that,
true. That's
right?
true. It does have one ruler and one sub-ruler.
Gotcha. So
So you could marry either a Capricorn type or an Aquarian type.
yeah, I find that, as an Aquarius myself, I do recognize there are, Saturnian expressions of Aquarius and Uranian expressions of Aquarius. And depending on the chart and the person, you can lean one way or the other. I know I lean more Saturnian in my Aquarian nature. I don't like to break rules. I definitely want to march my own beat and be my own person. I want that freedom, but I don't really like to break rules. I like to,
Yeah. You like the structure at the same time.
I like the structure at the same time, right? So,
well, I think the lesson here is learning the difference between I'm doing something versus I want to do this. Okay, I want to be creative and outgoing, but at the same time, I want to be with somebody who's going to allow me to do that. Somebody who gives me the space.
yeah.
But remember, you always have to give them the space back.
Yes, that's a huge one. Space is a big thing. Exactly. Because you have that detached, you want that freedom. You want a partner, but you want to have your freedom to do your own thing.
Yeah.
Good point. It's a really good point. So you're looking at that 5th house, 11th house axis a little deeper. So whatever sign you have on that axis is going to color around these kinds of themes, right? And your
like what groups do you belong to?
Right.
Are you interested in these groups or those groups? Yeah, when we look at the 5th house, we're talking about identity. Who am I in society? What group do I fit in? Do I belong or do I feel separate?
Right.
It's the identity axis.
Yes. And even we know that, through traditional astrology, that the sun, which rules the 5th house, Leo, is exalted in Aries, right? In the 1st. So that's where this connection of the identity and who am I comes. It's like, I am the Aries, but how do I express? How do I really want to shine and put myself out there? And is the Leo. What is that expression that that's creatively and uniquely you?
Yeah.
Right. And having a partner who gives you the space and the freedom to do that and the respect to do that. So with that kind of fiery axis, it's making sure both people, you have you recognize your role and where you can lead and where you can be part of the group and bring everybody together. So balancing that I'm the star and I'm also the audience member. Sometimes I'm the star, sometimes I'm the audience member.
Right.
That kind of dynamic is really a good one to keep in mind in relationship, because if you're an Aquarius and you have a Leo partner, this is going to be an interesting, this is going to be a dynamic that you're going to definitely have to explore to make sure you're giving each other that space.
Yeah, it has to do with identity versus the individual versus the group. So whatever axis it falls on, it's issues related to Leo, Aquarius.
Okay, and so the final axis is Virgo Pisces, and we were saying this is the devotion axis, and we call that devotion. We have, the 6th house and the 12th house themes, where it's basically doing, right, the duties, and then the devotion to whether it's higher spiritual work or escapist. Escaping the duties and being devoted to whatever that thing that's helping save us from what the reality we don't want to deal with. Right.
Yes.
The order and chaos.
What else does it have to? Yes. What did you say? If you had a Virgo ascendant, okay, you're a Virgo, then of course you look at the Mercury, but the Virgo is the detail. They tend to be a little more critical. More detail oriented, so they notice all the details. Where a Pisces is kind of like a dreamer. They have, more global type of views. So you have to be aware of that you don't criticize the person because he's a dreamer or he's creative or what have you, and takes a more global outlook. As the detailed person can learn by looking at the big picture. Right. Another thing I can get into is that Virgo can be critical, and the Pisces doesn't understand that at all. The Pisces is like the person that's, I hate to say this, but I always thought about my husband. He had Virgo Pisces because he was a doctor, Pisces on the side. He was loved by all of his patients, and he had this picture of himself that was a lot different than the way I was looking at him, but he could be extremely critical at the same time. So, it's somebody's out there for the world, with Pisces. They're out there for the world. Ministers, doctors, people who are their therapists, helping other people, and they view things differently than the opposite side. Right.
To the relationship. The Pisces side, the individual is more diffused and chameleon-like. So the Pisces can sort of, they're not the doers. The Virgo is the doer and doing, the daily duties and getting consumed by the duty and the drudgery of life and not really being able to see that big picture, and then the Pisces is, lost in the dream and the possibilities and thinks everything's just sort of magically going to work out anyway. Like, don't worry, it'll all work itself out. You're like, no, things have to get done to make it work out. Right. So you could have that dynamic. And when you were speaking about your ex-husband, it's, I was thinking of Neptune and also Jupiter. You have this sort of idealistic view of yourself. And also with Jupiter, there is that larger than life, that savior kind of complex too. You want to help and save people and care for people. And then could inadvertently be actually quite critical in your relationships, right?
Right, exactly. If you're looking for a rescuer and you don't feel like they're rescuing enough, then you become critical, but if you're Virgo and you're looking for somebody who's going to rescue you, then what happens? Then some days you feel like the victim, and other days you turn into the persecutor.
Yes. And there's that order.
Or the one who's persecuted.
Right. Yes, exactly. So the opposition.
But those are the issues that come up no matter what
axis,
what houses they're on. Yes.
Right. Wherever that Virgo Pisces is, those are the kinds of things you're working at, whether it's, order and chaos, control and trust, the practical and imaginal worlds, realities, and then service and devotion. It's no matter where that is, you're kind of dealing with that complex. And it makes sense. You can, have that idealistic desire to, and not intentionally want to hurt or criticize, but it can inadvertently, happen. And in terms of balancing that, the Pisces can sort of recognize the need to work harder on finding a schedule that works for them or a routine that works for them. And then the Virgo can look to see where they can loosen up a little bit and have a little bit more, flexibility or not have to be so mired down in all of the details and the to-dos. Where can we let go a little bit? And where can this one, where can Pisces sort of find a good, healthy balance in routine and escape, or like being present and doing duties of life? And then where can they escape to nurture that part of them? So if you've got a partner who wants to, tinker out in the garage and that's their creative outlet and be away from the duties of the house, but maybe their duties are other things that involve the garage or where they like to be. And you know what I mean? They can that kind of thing. And then you're dealing with the other duties of life, right? And even the home.
There's one thing I want to say about the first seventh too. When you think in terms of the child growing up, and we know that he moves into the first house at 2. This is where you get the terrible twos, because he's learning who he is. But what he's learning, or she's learning, is she's learning from the 7th house what people are reflecting back. So those planets in the 7th house are what we're learning to, how we're shaping ourselves in order to fit our environment. Mommy wants me to be this, so I need to be that. And mommy tells me I'm this, and mommy tells me, and daddy tells me I'm this. And so I'm taking all those qualities as myself, but that's not necessarily who you are. It isn't until you get into the teenage years where identity is formed, where you start saying, no, I'm not that. My mother told me I was, like my sister-in-law always told me I was clumsy. Well, of course, I turned out to be clumsy because she was constantly telling me I was clumsy. So and then later on I said, no, I'm not. I don't have to be clumsy just because she told me I was, right? So we have to learn that first house there is what I call a persona. It's the mask that we've been wearing, that people have told us we are.
Gotcha.
But the process of going through the whole chart is to learn who you really are and come to terms with who you really, really are.
Right.
And that's called the individuation.
Yeah.
That's what Jung called it. Individuation is finding out who you are and getting rid of that persona. That's not necessarily you.
Right.
And you won't find out about it until you get into your teens and you start looking at other people and their families and seeing, well, I like this and I don't like that. I like this family. Why do I like them and I don't like this? And so you're still reflecting yourself through your friends. But that takes part of that whole relationship as a teenager is where we find ourselves, hopefully.
So true. And, even as adults, you can look back to your teen years, to your young years and your teen years and see like, oh yeah, I can see where I was told that, or when I was a teen, what I was, what was being reflected to me or what I was interested in then. And really see how that you've come into your own and recognized and learned who you were, or who you are rather, through these experiences and reflections. And that's where the polarities are so valuable. I mean, they're present, even if you don't have planets in a certain sign. It's like, oh, I don't have any Aries, I don't have any, Scorpio, whatever it is. Oh, you do. Everybody does, because this is an opposition. This is a duality within you that you are working to integrate, and people will come into your life that will help you see that or work with that, or integrate that into who you are, where that energy is. And then you can look obviously to whatever sign, whatever planet rules that sign, and what is that planet doing, right? Where is that planet at? What is it doing? Like we were saying before, nothing is in isolation. In astrology, you have to look at the whole thing, but honing in on, as you're learning, on one particular planet or what it's doing, or opposition, one polarity in your chart. That's maybe you have a lot of planets in the 1st and the 7th, so that polarity is really, really important. Or wherever those heavy duty planets, that may be a really big polarity for you, right? Doesn't mean that the others aren't important. Right. It just might be where your focus is, right?
Right.
Or the things that you need to learn. That Aries Libra axis, wherever that is in your chart, is going to be where you really need to work to understand who you are in relationship to your partner in life, maybe that you choose, whoever that is, or that 1st and 7th house cusp, and what planets rule those, and what those planets are doing, to see how do I really relate in relationships, or what am I really seeking in a partnership to better understand myself and know myself and help my partner do the same. That working relationship,
right.
The dancing and balancing of polarities. And it's an ongoing, life process. It is not something you master.
Right.
I think it's just
the squares represent where we're having tension within ourselves. The opposition is, okay, I'm having a problem with somebody out there. We're reflecting back and forth and say, is this person good for me or not good for me? Do we fit together well, or how do I feel when I'm around them? If I feel uncomfortable, or I feel like I'm being smothered, or I feel like I can't contact this person. I mean, that's what polarities are about.
Yeah. Well, this was a great talk. I mean, even just scratching the surface of it, because I know we could go so much deeper into it. But just as an intro talk, I think it's a great topic. And if you are interested in us going deeper in polarities, definitely let us know. And also, for the Q&A, send in questions about polarities. We'll do a Q&A talk around this subject, and dive into some more deeper examples and keep sharing.
You can also look at oppositions in the chart.
Oppositions, okay. Exactly. Anything that's oppositional in your chart, whether it's a certain axis of opposition or planets in opposition, let's talk about dealing with polarities in the chart. And you can submit your questions around that, and we can dive in them on the next Q&A around this topic. I look forward to it. So thank you, Cornelia. This was great. And we're going to dive into the next one. And thank you for being here. Definitely like, comment, tell us how you're liking these shows. Follow us wherever you watch your podcast, whether it's YouTube or Spotify, Apple. Definitely. And come join the group, Conscious Parenting with Astrology, and we can engage even more directly there. So thanks, everyone. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.